baptizing my mother before Shantideva starts. So that's what I wanted to say about those things. And then just in terms of special events, our main special event this summer is going to be the second Sunday in June, which I believe is the 14th. If I'm mistaken about that, please feel free to correct me. Yes, okay, thank you, Dave. So it'll be Sunday, the 14th of June. It's the White Heruka longevity practice. It can be taken in different ways according to, what you want your level of engagement to be. If you have any questions about that initiation or about that practice, feel free to email me, kedrup@lamayeshiling.org. I'm very happy to answer if I know the answer. If I don't, I am very happy to check it with Geshe-la for you. And so that will be our main event for the summer. And then I think we'll do 2 months of the Bodhisattva's way of life, and then we'll go on to Kamalashila's stages of meditation. And so in terms of Geshe-la and myself, that's kind of what it looks like for us. We're planning like maybe a couple of special treats over the summer, like a 2-day Mahamudra course where Geshe-la maybe does a Saturday and Sunday morning on Mahamudra and things like that. But otherwise, that's how it's looking as we go into the summer. So lots on offer at Lama Yeshe-ling over the summer. So, please keep an eye on the website in case there's anything you're interested in. And so that being said, I see it's now 10 o'clock. I won't take more of your time. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. And thank you so much for sharing your Sunday morning with us. And we'll see you soon.
Lupa garif. Tetezema. Yeah.
So hello and welcome everybody. I think I thanked you for coming already, right? So this is just a sound check. Can you hear me? Okay, and let's do Geshe-la's sound check.
Yeah, kangatashi dele.
And you can hear Geshe-la's voice, okay? All right, nice.
Yes,
Jeez.
Oh, yeah, kangatashi dele to tani kanga kiwo to tani yabon to show you chimoyos. So kare tayo leka.
Geshe-la's asking. He's asking, what are you doing? I'm just getting my book. So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. Geshe-la hopes that you are all well and happy and that your wholesome activities are going nicely.
Oh, ta ruru soso ta lojo do da nyole lele cheba yina kibom
So if we engage in our study and practice in a relaxed way, in an open-minded way, there's no reason that we shouldn't feel joy and happiness in our Dharma practice. So how this would work would, we wake up in the morning and we're busy and so forth, but as much as possible, we maintain some mindfulness through the day. And then by the time the evening comes around, we can think, right, has there been a positive change or not? And if there is, we can feel happy. And if we maintain this strategy, this is actually how we improve in our practice. So it doesn't matter so much whether the time we spend on them are long or short. What matters is that we engage in them consistently. If we put a little bit of the time in the day to the accumulation of merit, for example, to the purification of negativities, for example, then this is the way to continue our improvement. So there's a line in Nagarjuna's text, the Shuleka, the friendly letter, where he says that even one who was formerly careless or was engaged in heedlessness, when they engage with mindfulness, such a person is like the moon that has been parted from the clouds. Yeah, so this is a story that Geshe-la thinks he may have told before, but it's relevant here. So it's the story about the family that was on the shadow side of a mountain. And so the father of the household, he thought, I want to kind of lower that mountain a little bit so we can get more sun. And every day he would start removing little bits of stone from the top of the mountain. A lot of people said that's pretty meaningless that you're doing that. This kind of task is something that has no end. Why would you do that? And the father replied, that's not so much important. Even if I just do a little bit of this task, whatever is left over, my children can do it, and then their children can continue this task, and slowly, step by step, will come to a meaningful result. So this is a little bit like our situation with spiritual practice, right? It's not a literal match up in terms of this analogy, but we can think of this continuous generation after generation as being like our subsequent lifetime after subsequent lifetime, right? We want to continue with this monumental task of Dharma practice.
And
why do we have to continue lifetime after lifetime? Why do we have to be steady and consistent in our practice? Because we know that we call the self or the I continues lifetime after lifetime, which means that lifetime after lifetime we're going to be faced with the same situation of I want happiness and I don't want suffering. So we would say that it's definitely the case that we're going to be faced with this, right? Lifetime after lifetime. This is not a situation that we can see with our eyes necessarily, but it is one that we can have confidence in. And also, scientists might not be able to determine those future lifetimes using their scientific instruments, but they also can't logically eliminate that there is possibly such a thing as past and future lifetimes. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And, even putting aside things like past and future lifetimes, we know that science isn't even able to isolate the very, very most subtle particles of matter, right? That's something that they're discovering more about all the time.
So
they can see the person, they can understand that they're made out of various components. Oh, right. Yeah. So I see how this fits together now. So in terms of science, for example, if you have these great practitioners who are engaged in the tukdam, right, in the post-death meditation state, right, all of their four elements are still somewhat intact, right? And scientists can see this. They can see that the body is still lustrous, is not stiff, is not decomposing, and so forth. But that's about the limit of what they can see, because the reasons that this is happening is not observable with their scientific instruments. So in the Buddhist not allowed to say in the Buddhist texts. It's just how things are. Okay. So in terms of these four elements, right, they have a coarser manifestation, a subtle manifestation, and an extremely subtle manifestation. And those more subtle aspects of it, right, are not something that science is really able to explain, but something that we have a lot of explanations for. So Geshe is saying that he thinks probably the limits of the observation capacity of science would be maybe not the coarse level, but that subtle level. Certainly the extremely subtle manifestation of the four elements, for example, is something that is beyond science's capacity to measure. Yeah. So these extremely subtle manifestations of these things, they're not so easy to understand or penetrate, and they're only something that we can come to an understanding of slowly. Yeah, lagna yore su yores. So these coarse manifestations of the elements and the subtle manifestations of the elements, that's where sort of the limits of science can observe. But the extremely subtle manifestation of these elements is something that is very important for us to understand, right? We want to have an understanding of it. And so also another thing that bears mentioning here is that these subtle, extremely subtle manifestation of the elements, for example, is not just something that is relevant to those who are in tukdam, in the post-death meditation state, but it's something important for all practitioners to understand. Yeah. And also, according to, for example, the world formation teachings, right? What they call Jigten Chaksul, in terms of the world formation teachings, this requires a subtle understanding of some of the elements as well. And if you kind of take those teachings into account, there's some places where a science maybe doesn't exactly have it right.
다 된다 노 첨보지를 건조 가리야 지지 권학은 리우트야 요아래 된다 건조 농사 첨보지 디요아래
Kator Chempodira.
지지
So where would we say that science maybe doesn't have the world formation kind of idea quite right? Firstly, it's that they're trying to say that there's like one single unitary main cause behind world formation, right? Buddhism would dispute that.
다때 걸어서 길레근 세근도 와대 바토와 또나 당간줄 저와 깔레 가슈 되지래 스탄다.
And they themselves admit that there are some shortcomings in their explanations of that. If you ask, is it really just one cause that can lead to this significant result? They'd say, actually, there's limits to our ability to be able to explain that.
당간줄 좀 몸보지 그거 아래 대용 제돈 지원이 텀바지 그거 아래 맞다 텀바라 때네 어떤 이유 도요 말이야.
We would say that one needs many causes for significant things such as world formation, and in addition to that, it just can't be any causes. You need causes that are congruent with the results, so causes and results that match up.
다 모두 던도 쓰이나요 세상안주 균이 이니 미지 그건데 왔을 때 연락 균이
Ale, 되네?
좀 먹어 그건데 왔어
Yeah.
근데 연락 균이 속 그건데 왔어.
So, even for a single human being or a single pet, like a single dog, we have these 12 links of dependent arising that lead to the rebirths in those various forms. And that's just for like one single entity. So something very significant like the world, needless to say, it would have many causes.
다 못했을 때네 알아 왔다 그때 다 쪼쪼지들 다 들이간죠.
Yeah.
셰셔근 도이노라. 셀라 세마치데 센저로지 왜사고스.
So Geshe-la is quoting a verse, which I have prepared this, which I have here from the Prajna Paramita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And the verse, I literally just wrote it down. Yes, here it is. Yes, I found it. Sorry. So the verse goes like this: there is no mind in mind. The nature of mind is clear light. There is no mind in mind. The nature of mind is clear light. And this is an extremely important verse in the Prajna Paramita, especially when we're talking about rik, our potential, or our lineage. So there's two aspects of this rik, or lineage potential. We can speak of the naturally abiding lineage and the developmental lineage. Those teachings are rooted in particular in passages such as the one from this sutra.
다 손지가 다 세게 내측니네테 대시자비가라 셀라 세 마치 세레 셀라 세 뎀바차바티 요 말에 마치세야데.
So to say there is no mind in mind, what this is pointing out is actually that there is no truly existent mind in mind. In other words, that mind does not exist in and of itself, inherently. The nature of mind is clear light. This is the second line. Yeah. So because the mind is free from natural stains, right? Because the only stains obscuring the mind are adventitious, those that can be removed, its nature is something pure. It is in the nature of clear light. Slowly, we come to a point where the mind becomes parted from those adventitious stains or defilements. Once that happens, such a being is that we call a Buddha. what enables that mainly is this lineage or potential that we have, which is the nature of the fundamental mind, its unobscured nature being clear light.
that's the it's say ronji meba say tumbani tela rojiniri
Yeah.
this one
Yeah.
tate kale ta ko zong zo ne la
Yeah.
shamba she ni ji she shira ya por ji she shamba jandon ta jinji gri de ya shu chen ro ya is.
So then, in terms of the emptiness of inherent existence of the mind's emptiness, this is the aspect of the potential that we can call the naturally abiding lineage. Based upon that, as we train in love and compassion and slowly begin to polish away these adventitious stains from the mind, this is the developmental lineage.
Ta me ni bo ta bi ka le yesong ji ba do yong ji ba se me tri ta ga res yesong ji ba to mo ne song ji ba
Yeah.
no yong ji ba se yo song ji ga
Yeah. So we can speak about this in another way. We can say Buddhahood from the beginning, and that, like, how do you translate this? That which becomes Buddhified. Does that make sense to people, that second one? So Buddhahood from the beginning, and that which becomes Buddhified, that which becomes enlightened.
ta Lama Tsongkhapa ta ro do chena ter mo yesong ji ba se me ta ga ma re song ji ri se ma to.
Yeah. So in Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, he doesn't speak of Buddhahood from the beginning. He speaks about possessing that potential or that lineage of Buddhahood, though.
Ta tandi ji san ro ri chu nge su do ka wa yin na yo ta ro ji ge sa wa te yo yi sa yesong ji ba yo na yo ko phe chra to ya ma di ba.
And, this is really important because when we talk about this lineage, this Buddha potential or Buddha nature, right, that naturally abiding lineage, this is possessed by all 6 types of sentient beings in samsara, right? But although they possess this, they are still within samsara. So if they're a Buddhahood already, if they're a Buddha already, it's not benefiting them very much.
Ta ngi ne ge ya te ngan zo kanga ta mi si yo ro was yong so ji ba te ta ka ze phe ri ta ji so na ta ti ta ta ni de shin ne te te yo.
So what we need to do, if you think like of this lineage as Buddhahood from the beginning, it's that lineage or that potential. What we need to do is nurture that so that we can ripen that. Then slowly we can come to that state of true and lasting happiness. So this particular verse, and I'll read it to you again from the Prajna Paramita, there is no mind in mind, the nature of mind is clear light. This is a very important verse. If you could remember this one, it would be good. So the nature of mind is clear light. Along those lines, we understand there's the developmental lineage through which we get rid of those adventitious defilements. So based upon that naturally abiding lineage, we engage with the developmental lineage, and in this way we can activate our potential. We can activate that lineage into realization. So one may ask, okay, the nature of our mind is clear light or pure luminosity, yet we still are within this cycle of samsara and we are still experiencing all of these difficulties. If our mind is something like that, why is this the case? And we would say, because one has not engaged with the developmental lineage, right? One has not cleared away those adventitious defilements which obscure that nature. But what that also means is that we don't just have to kind of sit here and just be like, okay, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to experience difficulties. If we understand that those stains, those defilements are adventitious, we also understand that there is a way to purify ourselves of those stains and to free ourselves from that suffering. So, although purification is important, we know that we wouldn't be able to come to an end of purifying each negativity from our countless rebirths individually. There would just be no way to do that. But what we do know is that these positive mental qualities, the powerful ones like bodhicitta, like the wisdom realizing emptiness, when we are able to bring these forth in our mind, this can purify hundreds, thousands of eons of negativities. Such is the power of those positive mental qualities. As we come to more familiarity with emptiness, as we start to understand it and it begins to subdue our mind, that realization of emptiness, as it grows, it renders all of those negative potentialities, right, from our previous unwholesome actions unable to ripen, like a seed unable to sprout. And we know that, for example, even if you have a seed that's planted in the earth, if you never water it, if you never fertilize it, it's not going to sprout and bring forth that result. So negative karma and afflicted minds, they do have one sort of beneficial thing, which is that they are not permanent, right? Which is that they can slowly be cleared away when we apply the antidotes. Listen, okay, so we'll do a preliminary meditation and then we'll do the short prayers before the session. So try to have a different physical and mental state from before. Bring the body and mind into a state of calm, of relaxation. So we balance out the mind and the body to make them comfortable. Just as if we have some really scalding hot water, we add some cool water until we're able to drink it.
Maybe no can you say, maybe that so no to Changkya yani so much.
So just like a gentle breeze creates this cloudless sky, in this way all of the projections, worries, unpleasant feelings that have disturbed our mind, they're gently cleared away.
Se tumba maimba se shawaga tonela ta ngado ngai daji pumbonga ta demutayo sompaji.
So now that the mind is calm, we're just not going to keep it empty of thoughts. We're going to examine things. So take a look at these 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, discrimination, and so forth, and see how is it that based upon these I experience this sense of I or self.
Taje majeva in ngaseri pa duno nzge tsusa tembo yobe no aji yartene kale patawa ina pimbongala temba jimato tanze ko ngase andere sa nzge tsusa jimanduas.
So there's this appearance, right, that there's this self or this I that is pinpointable, that is findable. But if we really start to look for that seemingly findable I or self, we'll see that we can't come to anything to find at all. we will see that in terms of these 5 skandhas or aggregates, that there is merely an I, a self, that can be designated in dependence upon those.
Zuji Pimbola, Teni Tabare, Mato, Zuji Pimbo Revesena, Teni Remandu so much.
Similarly, the form aggregate is something that is designated dependently, that is merely labeled. The form aggregate is not something that exists from its own side.
Go Tanima, Zutit, go re, Tanika.
So examining the skandha, the aggregate of form, through our own body, from the hairs of our head down through the various parts of our face, all the way down to our toes, where within that aggregate of form is there a pinpointable self? Can you find it?
Tene tabate kumbana to ngona to tradition ngana to ngakiva se.
Yet, if we cut our hand, we say, my hand is hurting. If we have a headache, we say, my head is hurting, as if that hand or as if that head is the I or the self.
Ta noji pimbo hamal tawa yinayo ta tene taba zonji re mato ngase korosul panzagutsun tuyamandus.
And similarly, if we engage in this investigation with any of the other skandhas or aggregates, we will see that there is just a self that can be designated based upon those, but there is not a findable self within any of those aggregates. So as we investigate in this way, we can see there is no truly existent, inherently existent I or self that we can find. Similarly with outward phenomena like a car, like a house. There's no car or house that exists from its own side. There's only a car or house that arises as its parts are assembled together, in dependence upon its parts. It's our lack of knowledge about how things really exist, our lack of knowledge about how inherent existence isn't true, that keeps us circling within samsara. Therefore, develop the intention. I will develop the wisdom that can grasp on this knowledge of how things really are for the benefit of both myself and others. May I develop the wisdom apprehending this knowledge. In order to do this, I will make single-pointed petition with confidence and faith to the holy beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just checking if sound for musicians is on. It should be. shasu demba dewa sheba jiten kemba chebu duwe kalo gyorwa lana meba ladami nangi temba songye chomdende pejawa shakyal tubala chaselo chede kyabsu chi ho temba chondende tishin cheba chachomba yandaba zobe sonje reba dan chazu demba dewa sheba shiden chamba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladami nangi temba sonje chondende bejawa shagya dubala chazelo chede kyausu chi ho temba chondende tishin sheba chachomba yandaba zobe songye reba dan shazu demba dewa sheba shiden chamba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladami nangi temba songye chondende pegyawa shagya dubala chazelo chede kyausu chi ho. Short mandala offering. Soji begi joji medo jan jira linje ne de gyamba de songye jindo me de boba gyo jogo nanda jina cheba sho idam guru ratna mendala ka niryata yami. Geshe-la will lead the refuge and bodhicitta.
sonje
Chedan sogi chenam la changshu bardu dani kyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunam ge drola penche sange dropa sho Chedan sogi chenam la changshu bardu dani kyausu chi dagi chenyen gibe sunam ge drola penche sange dropa sho Chedan sogi chenam lai changshu bardu dani chasu ji dagi chenyen jibe sunam ji drola penche sangye dropa sho.
ya da ke jamo anzo ta shawa te koro gewal ndo magewal deijel do
So in terms of the activities that we engage in, there's not much to say whether they become virtuous, a cause of happiness, or whether they do not. This depends in great part upon the motivation that we develop before we engage with the activity. Yeah. Right? And within these different sort of skandhas, right, or aggregates that we spoke about, the motivation is really connected with this aggregate of discrimination. Sorwa pumbo.
Yeah, so
yeah. Right. So if you look at the skandha, the aggregate of feeling, for example, you can think that feeling is like the rice and the bread and the different kinds of food and so forth. Dushe seriadi yapo inda mayin yewa chigindirwa.
Yeah, that the shit in yoga chasuna kotsema yoga yapon chandra.
So discrimination is going to know that with this particular kind of rice or this particular kind of bread, I want to add maybe these spices, or I want to add these vegetables. So based upon those determinations of discrimination, we can improve that feeling that we're going to have connected with it. So a lot of what determines whether we experience happiness connected with a particular thing in life or not is really connected to our way of thinking isn't it? So this is why out of these 5 skandhas, right, the skandha or aggregate of discrimination is so important.
다 때에 같으면 갈아져서 때나 어디 핀보들에 돼 그걸 게 하고 근데 왔어. 달래나 어디
Yeah, and so so this heap of aggregates, we can say, is like the plate upon which these various things sit.
어떤 근데 다 던지지 있어 다 안조 다 니가게 되시 다두게 되시 강가 tempo 용도 많이 다 드시고 보게 내가 첨부 체크요.
So really, in terms of trying to achieve this temporary happiness, even working towards getting to that ultimate happiness, a lot of this depends upon shifting our way of thinking about things. And so this is why it's so important to work with this skandha or aggregate of discrimination.
다 천디게 되시 이나 레바 가제 자체가도 세 가제 보게 더 림볼 따토나 어다 뉴마도 세가 레바 천들이나요. 보게 되시 체가 된대요.
So just from the perspective of this life, we know that if we train our mind to take a long-term view towards things, we know that if we train our mind to break through those narrow superstitions and to become vaster, that we experience more happiness, right? This is why the aggregate of discrimination is so important.
다 대누지랜도 와서 다투게 되시 다 잘라요. 타바 존지 되시 되시는도 요주 다 보게 되시 잘란도 다 대우 대 제와지 바랜도 와서.
Also, what is determining which type of happiness we are trying to reach? From the spiritual point of view, are we trying to reach moksha, mere liberation for ourselves? Or are we trying to reach complete enlightenment for the welfare of both self and others? That's determined by discrimination as well, isn't it?
다 던지지 이자로 대요 타신 바 예대요 타신 바데 요주소는 또 토는 용거래서 된데 거지세 정보랜도 왔어.
So we want to direct it in a way, because there's many reasons to do so, to think that I'm not just thinking of my own welfare, I want to think of the welfare of others. So I'm engaging in this activity to achieve a state where I can achieve my own welfare and contribute to the welfare of others.
로로 소소거다네 다 대시 인연을 대와도 등아세 예돈 대와 강가 예를 투대와래서 다 갈래 다 이제 된데 침보래서.
And we know that the others is important, right? Because we think it was only our suffering, but also all of our happiness, this only arises due to the kindness of others.
다 그런 수 있다는 거기.
So we are going to just take a moment to develop that motivation.
레레 지네다 중가 거세지 봐.
So we're going to focus on the rising and falling of the breath, and we're going to try to do 9 counts.
지진보 되는 때가 파트너 대주지 못하고.
So what you want to do now is you want to take a sort of long exhalation, hold it for a moment, and then inhale a little bit more deeply than you normally would.
요새 좀 때라더니 리용더니 다시 와래요 소만로.
This purifies the body and mind, and from clearing the body and mind in this way, the mind is more peaceful than it was before.
롱게 센제다 세자 침부 로적에서 왔다다가 전 야추슈 많이 봐. 어떡하지 더더 답하게 자 침부는 다 딱이 소만.
Understanding that the defilements are simply adventitious, that the nature of the mind is pure luminosity. I don't want to be stuck in this narrow-minded attitude anymore. I want to make this mind vast.
senche saltawa yinayo nye yimbi kala kari chimbo nye ma yimbi kala yo oda kari chimbo se ate ta halea ga nyas chire du samaro.
And when I consider others, there's this incredible reality that when they are close to me, they show me kindness. And that even those who are not close to me also show me kindness.
Nimarere sute saya tuya okay ya desa kanga lolo chene mi ga thoma nyo o tan de o mi ki ga senje mombo o chi ga leka shibala tin shwa si wore was.
Every day when I wake up, I eat food, I wear clothes, I sit in a dwelling that has arisen only due to the labor of others. All of these people who I've never met, who I might not feel connected to, have shown me such great kindness.
Techibo mares shomba niji shonju se ganga shewa la yon senji yawa meba siltawa yina pa jaya manu yuzula tin she gundus.
Love, compassion, bodhicitta, these realizations also depend upon the kindness of others, because all sentient beings are the basis from which these minds are generated. Those realizations only come because of their kindness.
Jitse tindila tini kanga yunzu ta kanya sewa ane deshi kanga deya te ta rumru soso leka zoji sumbaji.
Understanding this, then the problems of all sentient beings are my responsibility to clear away. The happiness of all sentient beings is my responsibility to help them reach.
Nyatse tindiji tune ta jawa esa wa kedro nozo janzo jimala riba korosu matse jino drotos ta ngaroso tende kaze tata jena tende yungare samaro.
I want to reach that state where I can really meaningfully do that. Lord Milarepa, Kedrup Norsang Gyatso, Gyawa and Sapa, they all achieved this as an ordinary being to that enlightenment in one lifetime. May I do the same. So bring forth that bodhicitta wish. So we'll pause there after the brief meditation.
Ya ta sunji tan ke la ja chembo chi te nge te la lojo do nyole chi ke te la lojo do nyole la ta ge ye ma to ri do tani tandi ge sare mare te ji chen ta de ne mes ta le chi res.
So the Buddha, our kind teacher, he said that what determines a noble person is their study and practice of the teachings. What determines a noble person are not things like race and caste. So the Buddha's vision is very inclusive. This is a great door to inclusivity, because the Buddha teaches that reaching enlightenment does not depend upon whether we are male or female, on our gender. It does not depend upon being a particular ethnicity or race. It does not depend upon our status or position in society. It only depends upon our study and practice of the Dharma. So, even today, but in particular at the time of the Buddha, establishing a path that was inclusive in that way was extremely difficult. It was against the currents of society.
다 로지 좀 뭐야 갈갈시
And there are many historical incidents that illustrate that fact, the stories of some of which maybe Geshe-la will share later.
야, 다 간서 누르는 미사. 다 레레진 적이 있어.
So then we are going to turn to the text. So just, I saw a couple of new faces. So, Deb Lavna, take it away. So this text is called The 14th Dalai Lama's Stages of the Path, Volume 2. So what this text is it's a Lam Rim by the great 5th Dalai Lama called the Oral Transmission of Mañjuśrī, with extensive gloss commentary by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So that's what I'll be referring to today as we follow along with Geshe-la.
야, 다 되시와.
Trijang Rinpoche dang Ling Rinpoche di nga chana shaksa chwa. Re.
된도사 송아.
Yeah, di dro
야도 니스타닌 거니마.
Jada nishsani. Loso. Yep.
디나 서와. 디나 라로 따타 달라 동보 라마 따타도 대타나 라마 댄스 저도 로아테바다바 자소 데 머루와 수임비 라마게 마 따제 jelö종 고서 바로비 뚜비 쳇체 전다 예명에시메나 시바까메 마타고 라마테 마송게 건라시 예마디 셰바도 시가 시지네체 냉어 체주 링화가 논절라 소비토네 따바기비 사토.
So Geshe-la is chuckling because His Holiness is very, very direct in these statements. So just to be clear, so if you have the text, the bold is from the 5th Dalai Lama, and the text that is not in bold is from His Holiness the 14th. So I'm reading from His Holiness the 14th. We come to the beginning, end of 132, beginning of 133. As such, regarding the way to investigate the Guru and disciple, first comes the manner of investigating the Guru and the way to rely on them. It is said that one should not rely too swiftly on a guru like how a dog reacts when thrown a piece of meat. Thus, even with respect to the means of investigating whether the guru is worthy, if one does not have clairvoyance, it is difficult to determine their level of realization. However, since it is suitable to investigate at the very least whether the guru is a good person or not through their conduct, character, level of knowledge, level of greed, actions of body, speech, and mind, and so forth. So Geshe-la is stopping there, and we'll come to the quote later. So His Holiness, Geshe-la is saying, is always very direct and always very clear when it comes to these teachings about relying on a teacher. So here we're talking about the means to investigate different kinds of lamas. This is the topic here. So about this particular topic, Geshe-la is remembering that a close friend of his said, if the Buddha were around today, I have a couple of issues that I need to talk to him about regarding this. And why is this? Because his friend says, we read texts like this, and then we go through the various stages to check the guru very carefully, but still at the end of that we can run into all of these problems with gurus. So why is that the case, right? So that's a very true point. Geshe-la reflected. This was a very true point from his friend. Yeah, and this is because we don't have clairvoyance, right? We don't have that clairvoyance to be able to really see completely what is going on in their mind, right? And again. Yeah. So it's not impossible that we're in this position, right? We familiarize ourselves with these teachings, we investigate the teacher, and then still the teacher's conduct may not be up to par, or we run into some sort of other problem. This is something that happens, right?
다 딜 조컬 좋아지라디.
So Geshe-la's not giving an answer. He's just saying that that's something that his friend would want to ask the Buddha about if the Buddha was around. And he's saying also, this is what his friend is saying. Is his friend. That's nice. Yeah. So so anyways, just a point there. Yeah,
Mara Tina, Chijasute Gombi, Sumani Kambali, Lama la Serte, Lama Reve, Lama Tapa Reve, Lama Tapa, Lama Temba, Lama Dabago.
So, regarding this, the Dharma King Songtsen Gampo says in his Mani Kabum, so this is available in translation for those of you who are interested, the Mani Kabum. There are 3 types of guru: the guru to be investigated, the guru to be relied upon, and the guru to accomplish.
This one, Lama Tapa la Sum, Juni Tapa, Juni Tapa, Yeritan Juni Tapa go.
The guru to investigate is also of 3 types: those to investigate from afar, those to investigate from close proximity, and those to investigate through keeping close company. Yeah. So Geshe quite likes this Mani Kabum. He says it describes things in a nice way.
Juni Tapa, Nyeba Chewa, Keshi Zimba, Shonju Semba, Tava, Genji Goa, Detavi Lamate, Gavi, Dunda Lula Za.
The guru to investigate from afar has greater fame, is learned and righteous. So I would translate what is righteous here. The Tibetan word I would give is ethical, is learned and ethical, and is esteemed by all as like a bodhisattva. Exert yourself to seek and take up such a guru.
That's good. Pena Papa Sharip Reve. Papa Sharip Katayana Isayo, Katayana in a Chire. Ane Sunji Gituchi. Sharipado Mangapa, Tomosunji Gitu Marawa.
Yeah.
Koni Tapacha Chimboyo Bachin Deitilla, Tiselebicala, Sunji Hakon, Sunji Corondon, Guto Yamare, Tito Yamar Corosho.
Loso.
Akosara.
Loso.
Aina Katayana. Sunji Gituchi.
Yeah.
Shielo Yelemanda,
Shalom, Ale.
Dendona.
Semshu Kiagi, Konso Sangi Gisachi Tugire, Sangi Chipola Tenet, Young Tugyo.
Suji Corondon Petu Yamar.
So
Geshe-la
is recollecting a story of 2 of the Buddha's principal disciples, Venerable Shariputra and Venerable Modgalyayana. So they were already quite highly evolved beings, and eventually they became the Buddha's students, but they each had some sort of imprint in their mind that meant that they wouldn't be able to immediately develop faith in the Buddha himself. So there was another disciple, Katyayana Rebe. Geshe-la thinks his name was Venerable Katyayana. So the senior disciple of the Buddha, his way of being, his bearing or outward behavior, his fine manners were extremely inspiring. So it was through meeting him first that they were eventually able to be led to the Buddha, not from the Buddha immediately. So the Buddha, in his clairvoyance, he said to, and Geshe said, if he's not mistaken about the name, to Venerable Katyayana, there are these 2 people that you need to meet. So go to this road at this particular time. And so what was the reason that it had to go through Katyayana? What was the karmic reason for this, right? The Buddha, in his clairvoyance, was able to understand this. Yeah. And Katyayana also, he understood that actually now is the time that the karma of Shariputra and Modgalyayana is ripening to be able to benefit from the Buddha's teachings. So this is why I need to be dispatched to go and meet them. So at that time, many of the Buddha's disciples, they had already become foe destroyers, already reached that level of realization. But Katyayana, in terms of his outer bearing, of his outer behavior, he was the most inspiring and supreme out of all of them. And so at this time, we know that Shariputra and Moggallana, they weren't yet students of the Buddha. They were practicing, outsider or non-Buddhist philosophical traditions.
And
so as Katyayana came to where Moggallana and Shariputra were dwelling, he was walking in this very calm, mindful, and inspiring way as he went on the road through the village. Troy, namginde ko trogeres. So Moggallana and Shariputra saw Venerable Katyayana, and they said, this is truly impressive, the elegant bearing of this person. But is he just putting on a show? Is he just being a little bit extra? Or is this like how he is all the time? So Moggallana and Shariputra, being clever, they said, okay, let's sort of hide out a little bit, just watch him from the background and see if he can maintain this impressive bearing all the time throughout the day. They saw Venerable Katyayana, whether he was walking through the street in the village, whether he was resting alone by himself, no matter what activity he was engaged in, he did so with this mindful bearing. So Venerable Shariputra, having checked him in this way, he asked Venerable Katyayana, how is it that you came about this excellent mindful bearing? What system of religion do you practice? Who is your teacher? Yeah. Dokare. Ale, loso. Ale. Kadi. Kadi seguir so lampa drogre mata. Ti cantes a coco. Si cantes resta.
So cante leki chini ngani join ba zit.
Ale.
Numa dochi yo.
Dochi quiere.
Otanas fi dum.
Di dulwa korla karina.
Dembajo ko rest anda dembajo ke chi man den den sungere sere chi lavares.
Yeah. Agosan su Katyayana.
Kata Sharipula.
Sharipula, Katyayana gi.
Yeah, temato.
Sorry, I always get those details. I just get very nebulous things. I can't remember. So we're trying to remember a particular sutra, the name of it. Geshe-la can remember the words of the sutra perfectly, but neither of us can remember the name. So I'm sorry for that. But anyways, it's a sutra connected with the Four Noble Truths. Yeah, Geshe-la said he's a bit embarrassed because it's a very well-known sutra. It's just the name is escaping him at the moment. It's a sign he's getting old. Geshe-la said it's a sign he's getting old. Geshe-la's not that old. No, you're still young. So anyways, it was a sutra about the Four Noble Truths, related to the Four Noble Truths. It may be the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, I'm not sure. But Venerable Katyayana explained part of this to Shariputra. Based upon just hearing that verse from the sutra, because of the tremendous positive imprints from previous lifetimes, Shariputra was able to realize emptiness just from hearing that sutra. It's like almost unbelievable that just one verse could lead to that sort of realization, but these were the types of positive conditions that Shariputra had built up. And so in this way, Shariputra immediately, right, he became a follower of the Buddha Dharma. So when he returned to his place of dwelling, he encountered his companion Modgalyayana, and they had a sort of a habit of having a discussion about the new understandings or realizations that they had had that day.
But
even before Shariputra opened his mouth, there was something different about him. His bearing was different. He was luminous. So Modgalyayana said, something has changed about you. I think that you definitely have more to share about realization today. So Shariputra repeated the verse of this sutra, but Modgalyayana, his intelligence was slightly lower than Shariputra, so he had to hear it 2 times before he reached that realization. So Shariputra and Modgalyayana at that time were already established teachers in their own right, with groups of students who were following them. So they said, we received this teaching from Katyayana based upon the proclamations of a teacher called the Buddha. We are going to leave this place so that we may become disciples of the Awakened One, and whether you do the same is up to you. Because they were good teachers, Geshe-la said, they weren't dogmatic, saying, we're doing this, so you have to do it. They said, this is the opportunity we're presenting, and it is up to you, right, whether you decide to do that or not. Yeah, so these stories just, connected with these passages on how to select, how to check out a teacher. Yeah, so we want to take a little bit of time to check, right? This is why His Holiness gives this very graphic analogy of throwing a piece of fresh meat into a pack of dogs. They immediately sort of go after it. We don't want to be like that with a teacher, right? We want to observe a little bit. So that doesn't mean that you don't study and practice with a particular teacher before taking them as a guru. It just means you study and practice them first, relating to them as a Dharma friend, and then deepening the relationship. And also, it's really good to get to know some of the students of the teacher as well. So then you can discuss with some of the students about the teacher's quality, about their style, to see if it's a fit. And so, this is something this topic is something that we want to study very well before approaching Guru devotion, because we know, right, that just the world as it is, there's a lot of complicated problems. So we need to be aware of that. Yeah, so we'll continue.
Yeah. Ani chen Lama sila nyamba deba chewa pon chumba tabi Lama noto me to meba chimatebala pongo.
So, continuing. The guru to investigate from close proximity is of 2 types, that to reject and that to adopt. There are 3 gurus to reject. A fire-like guru is to be rejected because of their words at the time one gets too close to their heavy afflictions of the 3 poisons. Reject gurus similar to a chained dog that is greedy and crude with food. And reject gurus who are like business, I wouldn't say men here, I'd say people, because the Tibetan is gender inclusive, who do not give dharma without having money or flowers. So related to this, also there's another story that Geshe-la is remembering that he'll share at a later time.
Matavi Lama Tulandoba, Niji Chewa, Shombate, Shomboche Tavi Lama Shala Chewa, Tosoma, Rode Chewa, Chavatoba, de.
There are 3 gurus to be accepted. Rely on a father-like guru with profound instructions who is wise in dharma and has extensive advice. Rely on a mother-like guru who keeps one in mind, is compassionate and loving. And rely on a jewel-like guru who has great blessings, is greatly considerate of the welfare of beings, and is an accomplished being.
Samba Yirin Rune Tabana, Sandro Chua, Pese Chewa, Niri Mepa, Domba Noa, Tetava.
With respect to the guru to investigate through keeping close company, rely on one who is not fickle with new company, is highly altruistic, equanimous, and who gives instructions, and in so doing, exert yourself in dharma.
Oh, this one. Talama tembi talasum, Devi temba, tembado, Shiraji tembado, Yoji temba go.
There are 3 ways to rely on the guru: through faith, through wisdom, and through requisites.
Tombo Devi Tembala Sumte, Devi Lama Yalama Yitoja Reve Tomba Somala de maybe Kanyeton, Shesi de Kipi Linga Yisenja Kuta Shila Deno.
There are 3 ways to rely on the guru through faith: reliance through perceiving the guru as a sacred personal deity, reliance through listening to the teachings with keen interest and being polite, and reliance through respectfully venerating them with body, speech, and mind. Right. So once we make the decision to rely, then we try to see them with this kind of very pure mind that understands them as the cause of 3 times merits, that understands them as the cause through which we can reach realization.
Yeah, mata was
And so, we can see also the guru as being like a mother. Oh, right. So the guru can be the mother in terms of like they are the mother that gives rise to all the qualities of wisdom, the mother that gives birth to wisdom. So we can think of them like that.
Oh, Tindivache, Tashiraji Tambala Song Tosoma. Oh, Tipi Shiraji, Lamechata, Sumbi Zu, Sombi Shiraji, Tembi Tipi de Manoa, some Gombe Shiraji, Chitonche, Son the Meba, Miss Meba. Shiba Shila Gomo.
There are 3 ways to rely on the guru through wisdom: retaining the words taught by the guru through the wisdom of listening, contemplating the meaning of the words heard correctly from memory through the wisdom of contemplation, and meditating on all phenomena as inconceivable, unobservable, and uncompounded through the wisdom of meditation. So Geshe-la said this is the very heart of the matter. This is the essence of Guru Yoga. This is how we rely on the teachings. We follow their instructions and cultivate them in hearing, contemplation, and meditation. When we say rely on a teacher, in essence, this is what it's asking you to do. This is the main thing. So engaging in the trainings of hearing, contemplation, and meditation together and consistently without break. This is very important.
Wa kipi lama la shisa do teba tosonga yi kipi sonde do ichi shila teno shiso su.
There are 2 ways to rely on the guru through providing requisites. Reliance through one's own requisites is to offer all your requisites, including foodstuffs and so forth, to the guru. Reliance through others' requisites is to encourage others to be faithful and respectful towards the guru, thus increasing the merit of the guru through the requisites of body, speech, and mind. Prostrating to and making circumambulations around the guru with body, praising the guru and using respectful speech, and making mental supplications and having conviction.
Deji kogedu. Lama muni Gyatso temba gishana toche chemba gendo trepi sha korum male. Je liche kala kajiso gichinze yonla tanonjon Danutan to be Nyamundar, she is Zumbatar, Seja Tonjela, Kaji Teshi, Tabi Noin, the Shinjo Topado, Nongidao, Rujiju, Notongone, Topashina, Lama Gyatso, Gibatar, Te Ruma, Geshi Sumpu, Tala, Demo, Geshi Tembi Notatar, Lama Nuna Leshi, Yepa Te, Tezu Pitapo, Kacha was Sumanda Neche.
So, what is a suitable number of gurus to rely on? The omniscient Gendendrup says in his Song of the Eastern Snow Mountain, spiritual teachers have gratitude toward the kindness of all living beings, and train in pure appearance of every detail and action. They seek to harm only the enemy within themselves, the enemy of delusion. According to Geshe Sangpua Ngok Legpe Sherap, one can rely on as many gurus as necessary if one remembers the kindness of all sentient beings. One can maintain the perception of pure appearance and suppress one's inner enemy of discursive thoughts. Otherwise, it is a significant statement that it is better to have fewer gurus, as we can see in Geshe Drumdömpa's biography, and that it is more important to rely on those few properly.
That Magaya Makoski Mandua, Soso Loy Nipala Tene, Richi the Lama Momote Algavoya, Richi the Lama Unity Algatate, Russo Tayarmato.
So guys, it's very easy what's being presented here, right? There's not a universal answer whether to rely on many or whether to rely on few is better. One needs to examine one's own mind and look at one's own mental capacity and affinity. And only then can one decide whether one is a person who should rely on just a few teachers or whether one is a person who can rely on many gurus. And as a way of sort of demonstrating this, it gives examples of highly respected holy beings, some of whom have had a few gurus, but some of whom have also had many gurus.
Tuta Nili Chunga Nepi Guaxin Jabi Shujele Lama Moi Teje Shinda Nunago Chiji Dombi Kason Zashu Pesa Noki Gelo Mapa Moton Naguma Machi Chamejamo Yapundua Machi Lode Machi Shama Zero Shaki Simo Inja Kandro Kazon Deshi Umola Asba Pame Jeten de Jupe Paveji Sheche Tsede Mombo Shuishi Shisago Sodi Doji Pomo Kachito Sashi Jisama Rambang Asha Ani Shuse Jitsamala Sope, Demba Shedani Chenshon Pesa, Nori Shua, De Levo Totombo, Shishe Consul Legos Sa Yabatar, Deja Gaishin Sona, Denji Cheva, Je Magipa Yi.
In prior times, it was the status quo in Tibetan and Indian society to differentiate between men and women as superior and inferior. Due to this, women were habituated to being timid in thought and behavior, and for that reason there were very few female gurus. However, there were many fully qualified great beings in India and Tibet in female bodies who upheld, preserved, and spread the continuum of the Buddha's systems of instructions, such as Gelongma Palmo, Niguma, the singular queen, mother of the Siddhas, Machik Labdre, Machik Shama, Shimrak Shaki Semo, Kandro Kusang Dekyong Wangmo, among others. Likewise, in more recent times, the lineage of Samding Dorje Pamo, the former and later Sakya Jetsunmas, Shuksep Jetsunma, and so forth, upheld, preserved, and spread the Buddha's teachings through explanation and accomplishment as explained in Volume 1 of the present work. Therefore, it is unacceptable to exclude such figures, meaning female figures, as a basis of reliance if they possess the qualities of a spiritual teacher.
That is one. What I'm going to that, they make it all your lesson of Pamela Marathon, but Chishuchi. So
this is very important to keep in mind, right, that women can absolutely possess the qualities of a guru, and Geshe is saying also being very careful how we speak about women, because denigrating them is also a contravention of the vows of secret mantra. Especially when we come to the teachings on Anuttara Yoga, highest yoga tantra, it is stated very explicitly that women, just as men, can absolutely in one human lifetime one human body achieved the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood.
어다 대지부터 그 다이야 디솔타나 같이 머리도 와서 어떤 데도 알아 다 તને 쪼쪼지더네 다 지서 좀아요 봉모래 강가 송가도 강가 송마지 받으러 받지 이제 you are kill you are
You know, and also, you know, some of the realized female beings are some of the most inspiring. Think of Venerable Tara's sort of unparalleled vows to help every single being without discrimination until samsara is empty, to help them achieve temporary and ultimate happiness.
당막 뭐도 말아 가시게 생겼어. 누가도 아빠도 부모를 한디 와서.
Ale, yeah.
Yeah.
Ale, los. Yeah.
누가도 아빠를 뒤에서
Ale.
부모를 한디 와서.
Los. Yeah. So Geshe said the Dharmic traditions, in particular Buddhism, right? We have these female sort of aspects, figures, representations of enlightenment, which many religious traditions don't, right? So many. Apparently I was too long-winded. Anyways, it's nice because in Buddhism you have these female deities, right? Which was not the case in other traditions. Karehaleya. Right. So, you know, if people are ever getting discouraged, it's important to recollect this, right? There's these histories of all of these fine female teachers and also all of these yidams or divine aspects in female form.
And
so in terms of the qualities of a spiritual teacher, it is absolutely possible that these are possessed by a woman teacher. Women should not be excluded here. His Holiness very clear in the commentary. Yeah. So, you know, one of the things too that Geshe wants to highlight is the qualities of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama really in instituting the Geshe studies for women. They can now become Geshemas, and because of this qualification, women can become abbots of their own monasteries and things like this. So this is really meaningful progress. So this opens the door for more opportunities for high realization amongst women, right? A more equal footing for those opportunities. So very important.
So
guys, just thinking, even in his own region, where he comes from, in eastern Tibet, you know, there are more and more women and also nuns who are studying very deeply and becoming very impressive practitioners. So we'll just leave we'll go through a little bit of the definitions of a student before we leave off.
Zenelo de teni nyebo ne chi shawashi mawo ye te no ye te manje nyebo la go ma shi ronshu la cha shi yesho la she dong yi shulu to cha shi nye she to le she che lo don je pi lo ti che tombi chi la tenye chimbo to den ba chi ma wa la ki shi yi le pa te ye te nga to wo den be lo ma shi ge la te ta be lo we to lo ma su den de na shu pa ni de che sha kha la pa wa la. So
Geshe is reading a big chunk, so I'll read this. We're on page 136. The definition of the disciple who relies upon them, together with the method of investigating them, even if the guru possesses all necessary defining characteristics. If the student does not, whatever excellent dharma is received might not be beneficial. We need to ask which defining characteristics of the student, who is a suitable vessel for the holy dharma, must possess. The trainee who is a suitable vessel for the holy Dharma taught by the sublime Guru is as said in Aryadeva's 400 verses. A listener who is impartial, intelligent, and interested is called a suitable vessel. Neither the teacher's nor the student's qualities will be otherwise. One should be free from the partiality of attachment to one's own position and disdain towards the position of others, intelligent with respect to differentiating that which is to be adopted and that to be discarded, between faulty and excellent speech, thoroughly interested in the holy Dharma, respectful of the teacher, and fully concentrated. These are the 5 qualities a student must possess. If such a teacher and student work in tandem, it is much less difficult to achieve liberation, just as a 2-winged bird soars in the sky without hindrance. So these 5 qualities of the student, very important to keep in mind. Los. Again. So the verse here is coming from Aryadeva, and he was one of the main disciples of Nagarjuna. So we talk about realizing emptiness a lot, and this bears mentioning here that emptiness can be realized by those who are unbiased, honest-minded, and direct-minded. These are important qualities for realizing emptiness. So if you don't see clear reasoning saying like, this is my particular spiritual lineage and so my view of emptiness is so-and-so, such a person is not going to realize emptiness, right? Because that's a very biased position. We have to be unbiased in our investigation. So we have to be honest-minded, direct-minded, and broad-minded. This is very important. So in this way, we are leaving off yata. Yeah, so we are leaving the discussion here of the Lam Rim. Geshe-la said we've done the qualities of the teacher. We've done a bit of a taster of the qualities of a student. So we're going to leave it here until the next cycle, which will probably happen in 6 or 7 months with this book. But we'll go to Bodhisattva Charyavatara next. And so we will go to the text on the view, just maybe to look at least one verse. Dinparebe pagin sewe. Ale ya jepa chikmin jemin. Ale los.
So we are on
page 6, verse number 8. Evidently my mother's face, which is neither one nor multiple, appears ungraspably in my brother's mirror, yet a lunatic like me has not the slightest clue.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah. Cheek min. So neither one nor multiple. So neither one. Geshe-la's glossing neither one. Cheek min sena? Yeah. So myself and the aggregates, we are not one unitary, a truly established thing. That's what the one is referring to. Yeah. So generally, of course, the aggregates and the self or the I, these are not one thing, right? They are 2 distinct things. Nor multiple means that they are not of separate natures either. So they are not of one nature, neither are they of separate nature. Why is that the case? Because if you just get rid of the aggregates completely and you try to posit the self, you won't be able to posit the self if there aren't any aggregates to posit it on. So that shows you they aren't totally of separate natures either. Yeah, so you have to say that they are not truly existent, that they... correct?
로지지 접이 다 돼도 지세나 초야 야는 저거 야래 게 지세나 저거 야래
Yeah.
시도네 나도 빈번히 지 말해
Yeah.
나도 빈번히 뭐다 돼 말해
So they are not inherently existent separate entities. They are not inherently existent unitary entities, but they are not of completely separate natures either.
다 라빠지도 차와시 시도니 야래 스탠다
Ale. So there's ways to explain these lines differently in sort of a coarser explanation and a more subtle explanation.
로지 접한 걸로 파자와이나
Yeah.
참으로 판로 야래
So if you are
나도 빈번히 로지지 접이 지 말해 로지지 접이 다돼 말해 잘라바이나 깔레 카사tin 로고 야래 참으로 로고 야래
So if we say that they are not an inherently existent unitary thing or not two inherently existent separate things, this opens the discussion on a more subtle level.
나도 빈번히 지 말해
Yeah.
들리라와들래
Ale. The easier one is saying myself and aggregates are not one. We're not the same thing. We don't bring that inherent existent discussion in. Just we are not one.
나도 빈번히 다돼 말해
Yeah, we are also, the self and the aggregates, not of completely separate natures, right? Because the self has to be designated dependently.
저거도와 다돼로 아빠들에서 리라버레
That's the coarser explanation, which is easier to understand.
다돼 많이 봐 리라고 먹어요 아레스 빼는 알아서 빈보 꾸마도 라빠 나그리 나나 생각이 보시는 나기 보시 잘라 그건데 왔어
Yeah. Yeah.
대이자 나도 세니 보대 저와 첨보
Myself and my mind is another good example to look at whether things are unitary or of one nature, separate aspects, and so forth. 양결승당?
예스 나 생각이 보시는 나기 보시 잘라 그건데 왔어
Because when there's a happy feeling in the mind, one says, I am happy, for example.
이나 나 코로 세 말해 세 코로 나 말해
But the self isn't the mind. We can't say mind is self, and we can't say self is mind. So, right, in that way, they are distinct.
라빈 걸 쉬쉬쉬서나 나라 쉬서 잘라 그건데 왔어
Yeah.
쉬사 쉬시마도 빈보 쉬면 돼
If someone strikes you, like, for example, slaps your arm, you're going to say that, like, somebody hit me, or I was hit. But they didn't hit the entirety of you. They just hit one small part of your physical aspect.
다 이나 콘 찌질란 저발라 때니 다 데트세기 알마도 코르 파치는 레몬도 왔어
But we can see from that, right, that the body and the self, or that the mind and the self, right, they have a relationship. They are connected. So we can't say that they're strictly separate entities. That doesn't work either.
단데서 다 저저 땡주가 멜로노라 세 땡주 하고 살아와
Yeah.
예 동바도 땡주게 지지 아레스 땡주
Appears ungraspably in my brother's mirror. So Geshe is just reminding you, we're talking about emptiness, which is personified as the mother, and dependent arising, which here is the brother.
시라니 뭐는 주 동바고 동바니 주소 사테 지바지 조리온 거 아레스
Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Those lines from the Heart Sutra. It's a similar sort of rhetorical strategy here.
멜로노라 선바 메시지 예엔다데서 뇽바 안디는 또제 마슈
Appears ungraspably in my brother's mirror, yet a lunatic like me had not the slightest clue.
땡주 때 멜로로 빼자네 다가세 대대바이나 노아 노지 옆이 노아지 아레스
So if we just kind of if we don't investigate how they are dependent arisings, we can just see things arising and falling away and think that they exist in the way they appear.
tene 가디나 녀모 녀만다고 사 대마도 코 요한도에 요만
And if we just sort of watch them in the mirror and don't do any other investigation, we'll follow activities considering them as existing in the way that they appear, and this is like a crazy person.
단데그디와 대이자 대대대 같이 지어봐요 보시면
So what's that saying is like just kind of looking at them ungraspably in the mirror. It means that I haven't well investigated them.
알레 제바지면 세 갈레카버레 칼라살딜라가 오야 다디 그와티다 로드 다토지 샤치 륜게 뇽바님보이 샤치 동이 아니 파리 초와이 깔레쇼네 세치 니바이 마게 통레
Verse number 9. Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti set their instructions upon the wind, and Mañjuśrī Garbha conveyed these to us by bird. So I hope to see my ever-present old mother without the hardship of a prolonged search.
다 라마 코로게 다 주자로 비도 지르베와
그래?
데 tsongkhapa
Tsongkhapa, 좋아.
lama khoroge
Yeah.
tumbanyi ge de kandi chen ro so da bo chi tawa tena de le da bo chi res.
So if someone were to ask the Lama who composed this text, how did you come about your understanding of emptiness? That is what he is explaining here in verse number 9.
tombo sunji ge su ma ra was de kale kale ge mo le de ge tani riso tu do ani pa de dawa ta ba ge ju pa ron de do ju pa oman ju pa do ron de ya ra wa.
Yeah. So he's saying that first the Buddha spoke these words, and then, right, great scholar practitioners such as Nagarjuna, who composed the Karaka, Madhyamaka Karaka, and then the Entering the Middle Way, composed by Nagarjuna's student Chandrakirti, and those instructions, as explained by other commentators, this is how he came to understanding.
다 디게 다 광이 스 도매 아이다 디세리 워게 잖아 와. lama khoro.
Right.
디게 다 디세리 뭐는 수자야 돼 마. 지체키트 디파른 요만님 보스 lama tsongkhapa.
Le di Lama Tsongkhapa rebe, Jambenimbo. So they put those instructions on the wind, and then the little bird who came and told him these instructions was Mañjuśrī Garba. So Geshe-la is explaining that Mañjuśrī Garba refers to Lama Tsongkhapa here, right?
ngaroso 다 소소가 노문다고 다 저들이 파타리 몬도비가라 마고바는 데는 디지쇼 아스 라지 자그라와.
Yeah.
된다고 지세기 하레스.
Maumba Denjani Sushati Kanesre.
다 레간 데는 디지쇼 아스 가젠다고 자그라와. 소소 타리 몬도가라와.
Yeah.
아니 노모텔라 레간 데는 디지쇼 데는 레가 지쇼스 깔아 노그라와 깔아한다고지.
Ale. Yabokomasong, sorry, Gimsen. Younger Gosune. Yabokomasong Kine.
페나 소소 노무지 요나.
Kale.
노무니 요나. 지데 타리 몬도가라와스.
Who? Su.
다 노무지 니 요라와.
Yeah.
지 타리 몬도가 요나. 지 데그라와 노라 사자텔라.
Ale, Michik.
다 지마 소소 레간 데는 지쇼. 데는 요포지쇼 아자 라그라와.
Yeah.
된다고 지세기 하레스.
Ale, so the instructions set upon the wind, I think that's what Geshe is explaining here. I was confused for a minute. So it's like if you are living in a family unit together with somebody, and say you get called away for work, and you have to go far away and be away for a long time, you are going to set down some instructions of all of the tasks that that person needs to do to keep the household running. So it's something like that.
다 된다. gemboldo pade da wata be suja yate lama tsongka pe tani kala la teni kirwa so da go chi tenda.
So the essence of the instructions that were set upon the wind by Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, he was able to hear an explanation of those through the kindness of Lama Tsongkhapa.
Deswa lama khoro ke tani amate thongso se tu mani te.
Right. And on the basis of this, he was able to see his mother. On the basis of those instructions, he was able to see emptiness.
다 년도 여바데 또 머니 요할 때 khoro thong yo amara was leji nebas.
Without the hardship of a prolonged search. So that means that, right, the mother was always with him, the emptiness was always with him, but he wasn't able to see her.
다 된다 ni to jibe ge lama mombo jiga.
Linchik nepa mayemagen tongre ngachena disana Karinsana nganso sangegi kadro na halepe tuzu rimpo tago.
Temare se tu mani teres. Amasir kazona se tu mani kazet la sasu.
Yeah.
The lechi de yara was the money.
Yeah.
Ina so nganso tungu yo mara was.
Yeah. So that ever present means that emptiness, right, the emptiness of our mind, for example, has always been with us. It's never been far away, yet we haven't been able to see her. I just didn't understand. Sometimes you don't understand, right?
That lama koro twin na wachi. That chi chulo ki lo gare. Look. Okay,
so Geshe-la wants to do one more verse. He wants to go to verse number 10.
Tata rore Lobsang gashi chutu denju so dala shembe no wan lili da roso jani gaje raje shi chowa no te.
There seem to be among today's scholars some caught in a web of words like thoroughly withstanding and true existence, who seek only to negate some creature with horns while leaving intact this everyday appearance of solidity. So this particular verse is considered a really special one. Many of us actually don't know the method of investigation to realize we say that things are not naturally existent, that we need to refute true or inherent existent. We can say these things easily.
다대야. 소소로 보게 노대야 되지 감각 들어가로 좋아하는 얘도 아직 짜대근들 알았어. 다 뭐이너래 공부이너래 잘라이너래 지 노대가 열어와. 노아지 열어와. 어다티 노아 도도 때 보게 템보 잡을 주도시라 마치. 아니 템보 잡고 아가래 로지 잡고 아가래 설다더니 계자 먹으셔야 되근들.
But we don't look at the everyday examples of the inherent existence of the house, Kangpa dang kare라고?
다 못자도 노아
Or the
가리나.
car, or the regular appearances that we encounter, and to try to refute their inherent existence. In other words, we don't bring this into our everyday life.
This one, 어다 될 주도시라 마치 와치 노아 도도 릴리텔라. 아니 로지 잡아도 다 덴바 잡아서 계자 뭐 연다 지요 봐 노아 샤게도.
Right. So then to not relate our investigation of emptiness to those appearances of the everyday objects we encounter, but to say that we are refuting true existence, that we are developing thorough understanding only as an intellectual exercise, this won't take us to realization. Some creature with horns, Geshe-la said. So it's like we're refuting the inherent existence of some kind of scary monster or something, but not the inherent existence of the things that we're dealing with regularly. So whatever object we are looking at now, whatever things we are gazing upon now, together with the appearance of that thing is coming the appearance that it is truly existent. So that everyday thing, its appearance of inherent existence that is coming along with that. This is where we want to start our refutation, right? Not based upon some creature with horns. So everyday examples, Geshe-la said the example that he likes, which he's shared here several times before, is when you're driving in your car and you see what looks like a round green sphere, but as you come closer and closer, you see that it's actually a shrub with twigs and leaves and all of its various parts. Its solidity disintegrates. Another really good one is the book that is sitting in front of us that seems like a unitary thing, yet when you separate out its cover, its various pages, the cloth that covers it, and so forth, that's another good one. So another one that's given is like a woman with very, very long hair, right? From far away, this looks like a single object, but as you come closer, you see it as many, many, many tiny strands. So from far away, it seems like there is this pinpointable, solidly existent thing, but as we draw nearer and nearer and nearer to it, we see it as the assembly of many, many very fine parts. Oh, okay. So it is said that we need to sort of differentiate emptiness like the very top of fine hairs. It needs to be very finely determined. So thank you very much. We'll stop here because we're not leaving a lot of time for questions. So we'll stop here. We'll dedicate the merits nicely. If you need to get on with your day after we dedicate, please do. But if you'd like to stay for Q&A, you're most welcome. Changkya Rölpai Dorjé Banam Jejorachi Chewa Nyamba Me Bayon Gone Gondo Bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje banam chejurchi chewan yamba meba yang gone gondo bewa sho jambe bao jita kyamba dang kundo zambo deyang dejen de deda kungi jesu dalo je gewa dida tamje radu ngo dusun jebe gyawa tamje gi ngo Can we get the prayers on the screen? Dikun kyang zambo choji ratu ngo wargi gangri rawe korwe jinkam dir pendan dewa malu jungwe ne chenre ziwan tenzen gyatso ye shabe si de bardu tenjurji. So our debate's going to come later. He said he welcomed the Q&A. I'm just saying, like, it would be nice to get a WhatsApp message or two about those really difficult words. Anyways. Geshe says, oh yeah, Kendrick lives kilometers and kilometers away from me. That's a fair point. He's just upstairs. Anyways. So does anyone have a question on that note? Marjorie, yes, go ahead.
Hi, I was just wondering, I thought early on that Geshe-la said something about the heap is where the aggregates sit, but then, like the word heap.
Oh no, the heap of aggregates is like the plate on which the individual aggregates sit. That's what I meant to say. Maybe I didn't describe that well.
Okay, well, what I was wondering, so Vasubandhu has that text called Summary of the Five Heaps that makes it sound like the heaps are the aggregates or the skandhas. Does that make any sense, that question?
Yes, no, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
So I just want to know a little more about heap, what a heap is.
So pungbo nga roa ngama di pungbo seria di thale dapo chik dua roa ane di nangla dushe dang I didn't finish your question yet. Din so tale dapo chik dua yene koche na pung se na pung re chik re roa pung chik. Yeah.
Tale dapo de
sugi pungbo de. Yes, yeah. Ale sugi pungbo.
So yi pungbo de do pale dapo chi peja.
So this was my mistake, Marjorie. So thank you for your question because I didn't translate that correctly. Geshe-la said that when we speak of heaps of aggregate, there is a plate. The plate is the aggregate of form, and the vegetables and the other things that sit upon it are the other aggregates. Yes, so you're absolutely right. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, thank you for asking that, by the way.
Okay, thanks.
So a heap, Geshe-la is saying, means that like assembling many things together into like a heap or into a lump. You can think about it like that. Right, so there's form, there's feeling. Pumbo chikmare, pumbo nga re re, right? In pumbo nangla mambo yotsang dene sem sena dewa mi dewa tanyungi sem di da sorry. So why we say heap? So let's take feeling as an example, right? We have pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. So if we heap those three together, they become the heap or the skanda of feeling. I think that answers you, right, Marjorie?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out because
didn't mean to.
Obviously I didn't translate that. No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing, actually. Right. The one who's eating the food, so there's an aggregate that doesn't sit upon the plate, and Geshe-la said that that aggregate is the fifth aggregate, right? So we have form, discrimination, feeling, compositional factors, and consciousness. So consciousness isn't on the plate. It's the person eating the food in this analogy. Yeah. And the fourth one, discrimination, Geshe-la said that you could then say maybe there's only two things on the plate if you want to make discrimination into the waiter. But it could work either way. It could work either way. Yeah.
다 심보차도 마차 피타보차도 마차 다 핀보 선반 드시티가 다 슈침볼라 같이 알았어.
되네 그 레체바 말에 고마치는 레도 아티라 보이나.
대대 뭐대 고마더라 와.
알레 라스
다 저대 다 제만다보테 다 드시티 빼빼자기 알았어.
Yeah, and so discrimination, as we said, it's the one that's going to determine whether the flavoring added to the food, whether it becomes delicious or not. Yeah. Yes. So thank you for that, Marjorie. That's really good. Now I'll get the plate right next time. So Carol, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you very much as usual. So I have a question related to page 134.
Okay.
And if you see note 55.
So unfortunately, there's not notes in the Tibetan edition. I'm not sure, but I will do my best. 134.
Shall I read out the note?
I just don't even see a note in mine. Are you using this edition, Carol? Okay, I gotta look carefully. Let me see. Am I missing something here?
So it's in the the fourth paragraph down.
Yeah.
Increasing.
Oh, yes, I see it. Sorry, it's so tiny. I obviously need new glasses. 55, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it says, when teachers accept services and gifts with the motivation to fulfill students' desires, they themselves accumulate merit. And I wondered if Geshe Sonam would like to unpack that, because I find that very interesting. It has a lot of relevance around everything that happens with the Dalai Lamas, all the pujas and the long life and the gifts. And so does that come into effect, the increased merit of the teacher, whether they give everything away or not? You know,
okay,
could he
I'm sort of
unpack
getting
that a
lost
little?
in the question now. Can you go back? Sorry. You're asking if, so the statement is that the teacher who accepts the gifts accumulates merit if they do this for the purpose of benefiting the disciple, right? Is that where this began?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So would Geshe Sonam like to comment on that?
Yeah. Okay. Nganso Lama seria di dulja pentok cheagi chedu ngempa dang pulya denso kelena dene Lama yang gewasagire bes. Di condensed chikres. Di nangla yomare. Di chikere. Go ahead, Carol.
How does that relate to the students' merit? What's going on?
Oh, okay. Ane di yena dene lobma gi gewa sada masa kepar yorebes. Lama kelene konso gewa chiksagire dua zechik pulna dua. Dene di lobma gi gewa condensed chagires. Karin lama gewa sana loma gi gewa nyungru drogi ngachena dopadire dua.
Lama gewa kandisagi yorese.
Yeah. Karin sena kelene lama gewa sagire du segire dua.
Mare kelene so to ta lama gewa sagira was.
Ale loso.
Akosarwa.
Yep. Dene lama di?
Lama te kandis.
Di deb nanglo la konsultima sono ine lama kelene ko gewa sagire sa.
Me ta
so kelene.
Me ta ya lama na senje do tan ramala yo shonji sama ramala yo was. O ta lama ten senje ji na.
Yep.
하고서라.
하고서.
아니 다 니까 옆에 쇼는 저기 와서 개왔던데 도그러 왔어. 남이.
카레 제수이랑 뭐라고.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that, so I don't know, I have to look at the note more carefully, Carol, because it's not there in the Tibetan. I tried to find it. I don't know why it's not there. It's just in the English. But anyways, I tried to explain this. And so what Geshe-la is saying is that the student's merit doesn't diminish or whatever because the Lama gets some of the merit. And in terms of how the Lama is getting the merit, right? The Lama is getting the merit by rejoicing in the generosity of the student, right? So that's how he thinks the Lama would get the offering as the merit of offerings that are made to him or her. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm thinking around it.
대 녀드 피와 다가 롱기 깨자로 말이 같이나
Yeah.
피와 라테네 다 라미마 다 키키코 카칼라 누그레 치데 그레 드니제그라 와스 예체나
Yeah.
오늘 로마데 로야 볼노나 라마라 거라 와스
Yeah, Geshe-la doesn't think that it's about the material itself. It's about what surrounds how that gift is presented. So for example, if the teacher is rejoicing in the student's generosity, one thing Geshe-la said is that if the student is a higher realization than the teacher, and that's possible, they'll get like half the merit if the student is a bodhisattva, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that when the offering is made, on what sort of occasions do we make offerings? Usually when the Dharma is being taught, when the students are being guided with some sort of advice.
데마타스 메시시 워로마 들어와
Otherwise, he doesn't think that makes sense, basically, is what he's saying.
Okay, thank you. I will
Yeah, you're welcome. You're
continue
welcome.
to think about it. It's around the splendor around His Holiness it's interesting in relation to His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Perna Jao Rinpoche yana nganso hale pe tenchuk mambo pugi yores, gyachampo netsu puya yores, dinsang tso di dabu chikre duasa.
메타 대지도 컨디르고 키쳇 밖에 야마로 와스 아로스고서 노사야도 다 던지기 쳇 조지레스
Yeah, so Geshe-la said that he's sure it benefits His Holiness in some way, and as His Holiness rejoices, it benefits, but it's not for His Holiness ultimately. It's actually for us as His disciples. The long life pujas and these elaborate sort of rituals and praises, they're actually a means for us to collect merit more than anything else.
라마르 대주데 다루로 소서 테체도 조지 자그레세던 누유라로 와스
And it's said in the scriptures actually that a long life puja for one's teacher, it's actually a longevity practice for oneself. So it's said to improve our longevity, actually.
Yeah, that's why it's interesting to hear the opposite here.
예. 라미가 다 될 지서 요런다고 쟤네 되잖아. 근데 대대 오고 지세요.
But Geshe thinks that in terms of the Lama collecting merit from what's offered, he thinks that this would mainly be through the power of rejoicing. If they're rejoicing in the faith of the students or in the offering of the students, that's how it makes sense to him anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I think there's more questions. Annie, go ahead.
Hi, my question is once again from the beginning of class. The quote, "There's no mind in mind. The nature of mind is clear light."
Right.
And you said it's from a Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but which one is it and where does it happen? Is it like something you come to a conclusion to or something that we're supposed to
nganso tambodi semla semmegi nesu chikdu denidi shera parchingido ne shera parchingido kagine resa.
시라 파시근도 가르니레서나.
shera parchingido mambo duarwa je tongpa.
다들 뭐뭐리 와리 같이는 제트만 나한테 와리.
So Geshe thinks it's 8,000 lines. The Prajnaparamita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, in 8,000 lines. And it could also be in the Tathagata Garbha Sutra as well.
Okay.
He thinks that this line would be in the Tathagata Garbha as well. So he knows those two for sure, but also possibly others.
Okay. And
Yeah. And in terms of like where you can find it most easily, it's actually in the Uttara Tantra Shastra. It references that. So the Sublime Continuum Shastra.
Okay.
And we say actually that the main source of the Uttara Tantra Shastra is the Tathagata Garbha Sutra.
Okay. Yeah.
So for folks who, I should define these words. Shastra means something that is composed by a great holy being, but not the Buddha. Sutra means a teaching that was propounded by the Buddha.
And my other question was, does this occur sort of like as a concluding statement or something that they state that is stated early on, so that reveals itself? I'm just kind of curious where your mind's supposed to kind of have this realization.
So you mean like where it appears in terms of like one's own practice, or where it appears in the text itself, Annie? I was a bit confused.
Well, actually, that's kind of an interesting thing where that would appear in your own practice. But also, I was wondering if the formation of the sutra itself is sort of something that you read, as you read along, you find this realization, or is it something that is stated initially so that you will understand what the rest is about?
Semla machite sangye rangshin öza o sena di jung tambo dabo chik yongi yoris ane shershin gido chatsangwa ma drone dene di chik yongi res tama la karin sana so ngoma netsu dinso la tene hako tsarebes.
Te mare ta kolo tombo kolo pawa kolo tamikala.
Yeah.
Kolo tamala ri kolo tamikala sungi wares.
Kolo tama ine do rangi nang langan so ngundro dang tama. So Geshe is not, he can't tell you the exact location in the sutra. He's not able to do that. He's sorry. Yeah. He can tell you that it's the third Sumbarwa Tama, Kolo Tama. So one thing to keep in mind though is the Prajna Paramitas are the second turning, but the Tathagata Garbha Sutra is the third turning of the wheel.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
Yep. And so within the third turning of the wheel, where the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, the Sutra on Buddha nature, is contained, there's two types of sutra. Those that are exclusively according to the Chitta Mantra, mind-only philosophical view. But this is not a sutra like that is only of the mind-only philosophical view. Ming, ale. Disana karere, sorry. Yeah, komasong, sorry. Donda karere, sig lelapo peshutane.
Dode gunde seren do inda wanda which say yores mitela.
Ale.
Tate chebamadu se zombie kola tamachi yores.
Yene sem sampa chikpo mena dene kareres.
Tejishi bini do te res.
Yeah, dene karichene sem sampa mare. Umagi tao yang yores karise.
Yeah, tate so amabi kejishi yores.
So Geshe is saying that this Tathagata Garbha Sutra, it's not exclusively the mind-only view, because it can also be understood from a middle way or a Madhyamaka perspective.
Ta se tombo se nindu was se tombo te ani yobati tenju se res.
So it says no mind in mind. So mind in one essence, kare?
Se tombote, se la se machi se achi duas. Se tombote.
Yeah. So the first mind that is mentioned is the existent mind, the dependent arising mind. Nipadi? The second is the mind which is an object of negation. In other ways, the appearance of the inherently existing mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there is feeling in mind, there is a mind, but when we say there's no mind in mind, that means there is no inherently existing mind, right? That appearance of an inherently existent mind is not there. So we have a hand, but we don't have an inherently existent hand. Yeah. The language might not be so easy to decipher, but Geshe said what it's trying to say is quite simple. We're saying there's a mind there, just not an inherently existing mind.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's actually really profound. I got suddenly went like that around it. So yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, focus. Yeah. Thanks so much, Annie. So I think Greg, you have a question?
Yes, hi, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you to you both again for the teachings this morning. They've been wonderful as always. I wanted to go back to the beginning of class again, and when we talk about body and mind, we, from a conventional sense or even a scientific sense, we say that we can see that the mind arises from the body. So I'm wondering, how do we develop confidence that it's actually the other way around, that the body arises from the mind?
Sorry, Greg. So I just you kind of faded out. I think I need to turn up my volume higher because I'm having problems hearing people today. But you're saying that we speak of body and mind, and the scientific perspective, right, is that mind comes from matter, so the brain, which I guess is body, right? But that the Buddhist seems to say that body comes from mind, or at least that mind comes first. So how do we reconcile that? Did I understand you correctly?
How do we develop confidence that the latter one is true?
That body comes from mind is true. Nganso chirtang senrigi na roa nganso sem seria de lula tene yongi yores karinsena lepa sukine suchik lepa la tene yongi yores yine nangsha yena tambo sem yongi yores tene sem la tene suktang lupochik yongi res dapochik sergire dua di kandes yiche kiegasa.
me nganzo said the linyi.
Yep. So Geshe is clarifying that body and mind come together, but we wouldn't necessarily say that mind comes first. We would just say that they come together. And so body, Greg, Geshe is clarifying, it doesn't mean like this physical gross body that we have right now, right, on the grosser level. Body means like any type of form, and here we're talking about the extremely subtle wind. So the extremely subtle wind and mind, these are always traveling together. And the reasoning that we use to fasten this together is that whatever type of result there is, it has to come from a congruent cause. It cannot arise from an incongruent cause. So what you could say is that out of the extremely subtle wind and mind, so subtle form and subtle mind, the main one is subtle mind. So the mind that's posited on the basis of the brain activity and the brain itself, as they do in science, this is a type of mind or consciousness, but in the Buddhist perspective, it's not the main mind, and certainly not the most subtle aspect of the mind. And that doesn't mean that they're in contradiction, because Buddhism doesn't rule out that when you stimulate certain parts of the brain, certain minds or consciousnesses arise, or certain feelings and things arise. This is very clear. Right? But what we would say is that through working with the mental consciousness, right, which is a subtler level of the mind just than what's attached to brain, through working with the mental consciousness, we can bring forth physical changes in the brain. We see this with many experiments with meditation. Yeah. So when the consciousness first enters the womb, because it is just kind of bare consciousness and the physical development of the brain hasn't really started to happen yet, that's kind of scientifically where you can posit the most subtle level of mind. Then from that initial moment of extremely subtle mind, things start to fill out. Like branches going from a tree, you have the sense consciousnesses and the other more coarse form of consciousnesses sprouting from that. Yeah. And how those relate to brain and how this works and so forth, this is a discussion which science and Buddhism are currently having. Yeah.
Okay, that gives me something to work with.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Thanks. Yeah, so Geshe, Greg, would take you to the first thing we pretty much discussed today, which is that you have this person in Tukdam, in the post-death meditation. there's no visible brain activity happening, but there's no decomposition and there's some sort of mental presence there. So that's kind of like that very subtle manifestation of the mind that doesn't depend on the brain. Scientists can clearly see, okay, this body is not decomposing. There's kind of like a luster of life that is still there. They can measure certain of those things, but they can't explain why that's the case, right?
Lama
Yeah. And in some cases, Geshe said with the very highest of the Tukdam meditators, there's even a little bit of warmth in the center of the body, even though they've been clinically dead for a while. Yeah. So that's the very, very kind of subtle mind, and that's something that's kind of beyond what science can explain. Right. So that's the mind that came from the previous lifetime, and that's the mind that goes to the next lifetime, right? That very subtle one. Dave, are there any other questions on social? There's nothing on social? All right. So I think we're 10 after 12. So thank you, everybody, so much for participating in the discussions. And I hope I got everyone's question right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Thank you so much. And we will see you in 2 weeks. And if you're interested in what's going on at Maitreya Institute with Geshe, check out maitreya.nl, and you can find it all there. Take care, everybody. So we still have a discussion left when we sign off, but we'll leave all of you for now. So see most of you in 2 weeks and see some of you next week. Take care. Bye.